Hey everyone, Melting Man 234 here, and welcome to another Halloween special on Forgotten Media, where I dig up some stuff beyond the grave. Today we'll be taking a look at a short-lived series that shares some nostalgia called MediEvil, an adventure game developed by SCE Cambridge Studios, published by Sony Computer Entertainment, and was released for the PlayStation on October 1st, 1998. In the land of Gallowmere, the land was ruled by King Peregrine. The ruler of the land had a royal advisor and court magician named Zarok. He was obsessed with his dark magic and began practicing it by resurrecting the dead. The king found out about his dark ways and had the sorcerer banished from the realm, which would soon lead into a war against the king's warriors against Zarok's army of demons. A man by the name of Sir Daniel Fortesque led his army to war against Zarok, only to be the first warrior to die by getting shot right in the eye with an arrow. Although Zarok's army was eventually defeated and was forced into hiding, the king altered the story to calm the villagers, saying how Daniel destroyed the sorcerer and died a brave hero. Years later, Zarok returned to Gallowmere for revenge, using his power to trap the land in eternal darkness, sucking the souls out of the people, turning them into mindless zombies, and bringing back the dead once more. He also accidentally brings back Daniel Fortesque as well. And now it's up to Dan to defeat Zarok and become a true hero. The game has you explore the land of Gallowmere, such as the cemetery, a pumpkin gorge, a haunted pirate ship, and others while battling an army of zombies, skeletons, possessed pumpkins, and other creatures Zarok has up his sleeve. One of my favorite enemies in the game is the stained glass demon, who acts as the first boss in the game. Gargoyle heads are common in Gallowmere. The green ones give you advice, but also make fun of Dan and how much of a big coward he was when he was alive, while the blue ones serve as your shop for buying weapons and upgrades. On your travels, you'll pick up various items that have their own purposes, such as rune stones to unlock doors, and a witch talisman to summon witches to take on a mission. Health potions upgrade your HP, or you can simply find a green beam of light to heal or refill your health potions. Chalices are in each level except for the first one. If you find them all, then you get to see the good ending to the game. To get a chalice, you just have to go around beating up a bunch of enemies to fill it up, find it, make it to the end of the stage, and you'll be given access to the Hall of Heroes, a place full of deceased heroes of Gallowmere who fought against Zarok in the war. Sometimes you'll be able to talk to them and they'll give you new weapons, such as a stronger shield, a bow and arrow, a war hammer, and many others. Dan can also tear off one of his arms and uses it for a weapon or a boomerang, which I find pretty funny. There's also a dragon costume that you can find that lets you breathe fire and is needed for a specific level. The game was known for its dark medieval setting, with a bit of humor thrown in. The music is pretty good, giving it an eerie atmosphere, and it's a pretty fun game. There's also a few scrapped levels in the game. One of them would feature Martin the Earthworm, a character only seen in one cutscene in the game, and a deleted cutscene. He was gonna have more of a bigger role, like be Dan's little companion, and have his own level in unlocking the doors to the asylum, before it was all scrapped. There was also another scrapped level of you running from the dragon that was seen in a cutscene, but they decided to remove it and just have Dan skip to the next level. Another interesting thing is that the Japanese version of the game has its share of changes here and there. Dan still wears his helmet, and while wearing the dragon costume, it drains your health. Overall, MediEvil is a fun game that has challenge, a creepy atmosphere, and fun gameplay while listening to its music. It's won several awards back then, such as Best PlayStation Game, Best Platinum Seller of 1999, the Golden Award, Silver Award, and Token Prize. And it still holds up today, since it's still fun to play. Next is MediEvil 2, made by the same people that was released for the PlayStation once again on April 30th, 2000. This time the setting is in London in the year 1886, 500 years after the first game. An evil wizard named Lord Palethorn discovers the remains of Zarok's spellbook and uses its power to awaken the dead once more. This causes some side effects as Palethorn transforms into a demon and once again brings back Sir Daniel Fortesque, who has been displayed at a museum. With the help of his new friends, Dan begins his mission to defeat Palethorn from using the book's powers. The gameplay is still the same adventure style as the first one. Familiar weapons return along with some new ones, like the blunderbuss, a Gatling gun, bombs, and a few others. You still have someone that sells you stuff, but instead of gargoyles, you have spivs, creepy characters with cloaks that just sell you stuff. And you still have the chalices to collect and get new weapons, and to also see the good ending if you find them all. Although the endings to this game can be a bit confusing in trying to figure out which is the good ending and which is the bad ending. Dan is still the cowardly skeleton determined to be a hero warrior we enjoyed, although this time he wears gloves and he can actually talk. In the first game, he just mumbled with subtitles popping up since he has no lower jaw, and in the sequel, he can, and it sucks. But at least he has a love interest, a princess mummy named Kia, who's been awakened from her tomb in the museum. And I will say they make a frighteningly cute couple. The interesting thing about the sequel is that you get new costumes, such as Dankenstein, which is used for a boxing match, Gold Armor Dan, which gives you more defense, and Dan Hand, which is pretty funny. If Dan finds a green hand running around, he can take off his head and put it on the hand to access certain areas in the game. This game features more challenge than the first one with its puzzles and missions. Some fans are a bit on and off about the sequel, probably because there's no medieval setting this time, and instead we have more of a London setting. Well, if that's the case, they should have just called it MediEvil 2 Adventures in London, or something like that. The music is still nice to listen to, and the enemies and bosses you encounter are pretty cool, like the Ripper, who's also one of my favorites. Overall, MediEvil 2 is a worthy sequel. If you like the first one and you want a change of scenery and challenge, give this game a go. So we had two great games on the PlayStation, and that was pretty much it for MediEvil. And then in 5 years, we got MediEvil Resurrection, made by the same people, for the most part, and was released on the PSP in Europe on September 1st, 2005, and was later ported to the US on September 13th, 2005. So, what's Resurrection? Well, it's basically a remake of the first game. The story is the same as the original. The only thing that they've thrown in is that Dan's accompanied by Al-Zalam, some genie who's trapped inside his head after having his powers being stolen by Zarok. And then we have the Anubis Stone, an ancient artifact that was divided into 4 pieces, and Dan needs to find them all in order to defeat Zarok. Gameplay is the same as before, running around, fighting zombies, skeletons, and so on. Weapons are the same, locations are still there, although some of them have been replaced with new levels like Scurvy Docks, or removed completely. One thing they've added in are minigames like Whack-a-Zarok and others that can be found in one of the levels. This game features drastic changes to the character designs, new characters, personalities, and level designs. Some of the levels are like the original with more lights so that you can actually see more, but most of them have been expanded or changed completely, like the Hall of Heroes, which looks more like Mount Olympus. Dan has more personality in the remake, which is nice and fun to watch. The music is still cool, listening to all those familiar tunes being fully orchestrated, along with some new tunes thrown in. One difference to the remake and the original is the amount of humor. Now, in the original, it wasn't always dark, it had its share of humor and fun. So when they worked on the remake, they decided to double the amount of humor in this game, which some people think that they're trying too hard to be funny on. But I don't think it's that bad. Besides, I've seen more worse cases with forced humor and trying too hard to be funny. Also, I really didn't like that Al-Zalam character. I found him to be very annoying, just like Omochao. Now, I could write a long list of little differences with the remake and the original, but I'll only mention a few. For the chalice, there's 15 instead of 20, and instead of filling it up and then finding it, you can actually find the chalice before or after you fill it up, which is nice. Since the anthill level was removed, there's a mission where Dan needs to catch a bunch of these ugly-looking fairies with a net to get some fungus for the Forest Witch. And instead of Zarok's giant lizard/dragon form in the original final battle, he turns into a giant snake in the remake. Although the remake didn't have the charm as the original, it's still nice. My only complaint about gameplay is that the hit detection can be off at times, and the controls seem to be a bit stiff. But overall, Resurrection is an okay remake, but I like the original better. They even joked about the end saying, Zarok is finally defeated. Well, that is unless there's a sequel. So that does make me wonder if they had plans for a sequel. What were they gonna do? Remake the second game and have Zarok team up with Palethorn? Or something entirely different? But if they decide to remake the second game, then it seems like the MediEvil series would be very similar to the new Super Mario Bros. Series. And that was the end of the MediEvil games. Only 2 games and a remake. The only time we see Dan in a different game was Hot Shots Golf 2, where he was featured as a secret unlockable character. And there's also an interesting possible reference to the character in the video game Ghost Hunters. It features a character named Colonel Freddy Fortesque, a possible relatives to Sir Daniel Fortesque, or just pure coincidence. So as the years went by, Dan was put to rest for good, never to be seen again. But that didn't stop the series to slowly start its small fan base. Anyone who's played the game will sometimes talk about their days of their youth on how it used to scare them, but they still enjoyed it. The game can be a bit tricky to find on eBay for low prices, mainly the sequel, which is pretty expensive. Of course, the remake is usually cheap. The first game and its remake have been ported onto the PlayStation Network and the PlayStation Store. Now, if only we can get the second one up there. There are even 4 MediEvil prototypes developed for the PlayStation consoles: MediEvil Boneyard, MediEvil Grave Cards, MediEvil Legends, and MediEvil Defense of the Damned. They were developed as a university project at the University of Abertay Dundee, and I probably mispronounced that word. Oh well. They were showcased to Sony but never released, so who knows if these games will give the company some ideas in bringing back the series or not. But at least it showed that some people still remembered MediEvil. Most of the demo footage of these prototypes can be found on Gallowmere Wiki if you're interested in seeing them. In closing, the MediEvil series is wonderful. If you're in the mood to play something dark and spooky in a medieval theme for Halloween, give this series a go. Sir Daniel Fortesque is a fun character, but he may not be forgotten for long. I have heard he will be featured as a playable character in the upcoming PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, and that's gonna be awesome. Seeing good old Dan back in action, swinging his sword around just like old times. Well, that wraps up this episode of Forgotten Media. Tune in next time when I hopefully get that co-op episode uploaded.
Sorry. I got a lot of stuff on my plate.
That's what you've been saying for months now, and you're never gonna make it because you keep going emo and you've been doing this and you. Shut up, Duncan. I'm getting that video up whether you like it or not. And why are you even complaining about it anyway? You don't even like my stuff. Because, you suck. Oh, sure, like you're any better, you spoothead. Anyway, as I said before, the co-op episode will be up eventually. So until then, this is Melting Man 234 signing out.